He was once dismissed from the band he helped start, arrested for pointing a gun at his wife, and then yelled in wrath backstage while drunk. The next morning, he came on stage and played a piece that was so lovely. Everyone in the room was quiet. That was Dickey Betts, the wild artist from the American South who wrote Ramblin Man, the only Allman Brothers band hit to break into the Billboard Top 10, and Jessica, a wordless symphony that made the world see Southern rock as a genre with real emotional depth. He was also the man who burned every bridge. He lost friends, marriages, and his reputation just to live and play music the way he thought was right. If Duane Allman was the fallen angel of the Allman Brothers band, then Betts was the living soul, hurt, defiant, and impossible to govern. He played the guitar like he was telling his own life story. You didn't need any words, just one riff, and you could feel the loneliness, longing, and pain in every note. This is the story of Dickey Betts, a genius who never held back, a renegade who never gave up, and an artist whose music still lives on after he died in 2024. Are you sure you really comprehend a legend merely by listening to a song? Life in the beginning. On December 12, 1943, Dickey Betts was born in West Palm Beach, Florida. But that wasn't where he was made. He was born and raised in Bradenton, a small farming village on Florida's southwestern coast, where orange orchards went on forever, dirt roads kicked up crimson dust, and time seemed to move more slowly. His family wasn't rich or well-known, but there was always one thing in the air: the music of the American South. His father was a quiet man who drank a lot and did odd jobs. He played the mandolin and banjo at local events. His mom liked swing music and would often turn on the radio while she cooked. Bill Monroe, Hank Williams, and the Carter family were Betts's everyday companions as a child. Music wasn't a distant dream, it was something that lived right there on the front porch. Betts started playing the ukulele when he was 6 years old. After that, he slowly learned how to play the fiddle, mandolin, and banjo. But it wasn't until he borrowed an electric guitar from a neighbor and played it that he felt this was meant to be. Little Dickey would take his guitar out to the porch every afternoon and play the same songs he heard on the radio over and over. He never learned how to read music. He learned by listening and by feeling. He had the spirit of an artist from an early age. Not the delicate sort that dreams, but the street-smart kind that clings to music as a way to stay alive. It was evident from a young age that he was rebellious, headstrong, and impossible to control. Betts hated rules. He quit a church music lesson once because they had him play by the rules. "I don't play music to hear that I'm in tune." In a rare interview on his boyhood, he said, "I play to feel alive." There weren't any huge family catastrophes, but Betts's childhood wasn't peaceful. He was raised in a culture that taught men to be strong, tough, and never weak. If you had any feelings, you were supposed to put them in a glass or a fist. But Betts went a different way. He put all of his feelings into the guitar. That was the only place he could be weak, recall, hurt, and dream without feeling bad about it. He quit school at 16, not because he didn't do well, but because it wasn't teaching him what he needed to know. He started performing in local bands including the Jokers, the Soul Children, and the Second Coming. He traveled across the Tampa Bay area playing in bars, clubs, and county fairs. He once stated, "I played in a bar where people brought guns, but no one shot while I played Sweet Home Alabama. They just heard." At that point, I knew I could live with music. People back then would never have thought that the long-haired youngster from Bradenton who wore leather jackets and high boots was carrying the seeds of a musical revolution, a style that didn't yet have a name. A way of playing the guitar that had never been named. But Betts didn't need a name. All he needed was a guitar, a stage, and a little bit of southern breeze blowing on his collar after each song. Southern rock wasn't around yet, but its spirit was already growing. In the hot summers of Florida, in the early drunken nights, and in the first riffs Dickey Betts played on a borrowed guitar, the spirit had already begun to sing. First years of work. Before his name was on the cover of Southern rock legends, Dickey Betts was just a hired gun. He played guitar in bar bands, local touring groups, and dive spots where his music often had to compete with the sound of beer bottles popping and intoxicated laughter. But it was in those dusty, rough-edged areas without studios or sound engineers that he honed his intuition. In those settings, music either thrived or died in the moment. Betts played with bands like the Jokers and later the Second Coming in the 1960s. The Second Coming was a psychedelic rock band from Florida where he started to try out dual harmonies and long improvisation. None of the band members were prominent, but Betts immediately became known as a one-of-a-kind guitarist in the Southern underground scene. He played rock with a lot of jazz, blues with a bit of country, and most importantly, he knew how to make a solo become a tale. During this time, Betts met Barry Oakley, a young bassist with a strong rhythm who would transform his life. Oakley became more than simply a personal buddy, he was the link that connected Betts to Duane and Greg Allman, two brothers who were looking for something more. Duane Allman went back to the South in 1969 following a disastrous tour with the band Hourglass in California. They were set on making a new kind of band, one that went beyond traditional blues yet didn't quite fit into rock. Duane felt he had discovered the right guy after just one jam session. Betts and Allman were different, yet they worked well together. One was brave and keen, while the other was deep and thoughtful. They didn't play to show up each other. They moved side by side and blended together without colliding, like two sides of a single spirit. The new band officially formed in March 1969 in Jacksonville, Florida. It had Greg Allman on vocals and keys, Barry Oakley on bass, and Butch Trucks and Jai Johani on drums. Duane came up with the name for the band, the Allman Brothers Band, but Dickey Betts was an important part of it from the start. Betts didn't just see this band as a group of people, he saw them as a second family. A place where he could act on his impulses and play 10-minute solos without anyone stopping him. He and Duane were the first to play guitar harmonies on concert, with melodic lines that flowed together like two rivers. This sound would become the unmistakable signature of Southern rock. The Allman Brothers Band's first album, released in 1969, didn't do well at the box office, but critics liked it. Betts wrote the song in remembrance of Elizabeth Reed, and its jazz-influenced arrangement immediately made it one of the band's best live performances. Betts made this statement for the first time. He was more than just a guitarist, he was a sound storyteller. In a rock world torn between California psychedelia and the British invasion, the Allman Brothers Band, with Betts's silent architecture, created a third path that brought the grit, sadness, and pride of the American South to the stage. Dickey Betts helped start a whole new era in American rock music with his 20-minute jams at Fillmore East and the poetic riffs in songs like Dreams and Revival. Betts was no longer a hired hand, even if his career was just getting started. He was now a part of a story that would live on. Success in your career. The Allman Brothers Band was shocked when Duane Allman died in a motorbike accident in 1971. The band's leader was no longer with them. A brotherhood of musicians had been broken up. And although no one said it out loud, everyone looked at Dickey Betts. No one was really ready. But Betts understood that the band would split apart if he didn't stand up. And he did step up, but not with loud words. His guitar shouted louder than ever before. Betts didn't only take up lead guitar responsibilities when Duane wasn't there. He started writing more, playing longer, and singing more. Over time, this helped the band go from being sad to being at the top of the charts. Brothers and Sisters came out in 1973, and Betts was the creative force behind it. He wrote Jessica, a 7-minute instrumental piece with no words or singing, but a lot of emotion. It wasn't just a tune. He talked about how much he missed Duane, how happy he was to be a parent, and how he believed in a form of music that could survive even after someone died. But the tune that really made Dickey Betts a legend was Ramblin Man, which he penned, sung, and transformed into the band's first and only top 10 smash on the Billboard Hot 100. Not only was it the most financially successful Southern rock song ever, it was also a remarkable change of direction that brought in country rock elements that were both easy to understand and complicated enough to keep the music's creative integrity. The Allman Brothers Band ruled the greatest venues in the U.S. from 1973 to 1976. Dickey Betts was more than simply a guitarist. He was the band's principal songwriter, singer, and sometimes the glue that held them together as Greg Allman got into heroin and legal issues. At the same time, Betts started to feel that the band was a prison that kept him from being creative since the Allman name was always hanging over him. So, in 1974, he put out his debut solo album, Highway Call. That was a shocking turn. There are no extended jam band solos or Southern electric blues. Instead, there is a simple, rootsy mix of folk, country, and jazz with a lot of fiddle and steel guitar. The public witnessed a different side of Betts for the first time, gentle, roaming, sitting on a wooden porch playing acoustic guitar with a shy smile. Betts didn't stop there. He started his own band, Dickey Betts and Great Southern, in 1977. He didn't want to be a copy of himself, as shown by albums like Great Southern, 1977, and Atlanta's Burning Down, 1978. He moved away from the Allman sound and even from what fans expected him to perform. Instead, he played what he dubbed Americana before the word ever existed. During this time, Betts toured non-stop, taught young guitarists, and shared his unique style of twin harmony and rare live improvisation. Not via media hoopla or scandal, but with a guitar and a bunch of committed players, he became a true bandleader. In the 1980s and 1990s, when the Allman Brothers got back together, Betts was still a primary songwriter, but he never stopped being the head of Great Southern. He carried the group through the vintage rock phase in the late 1990s, keeping Southern rock alive at every gig and every 20-minute live jam. In 2000, he revived Great Southern and put out a number of live CDs, including Live at the Odeon and Instant Live. Critics liked them, even though they didn't become very popular. Betts never gave in to what people wanted, never played what was popular, and never played what was popular. He played what he had to play. After being retired for a few years, he announced in 2018 that he would be going back on stage, this time with his son Dwayne Betts. The tour was seen as a passing of the torch. Dwayne played guitar like his dad, but he was more peaceful. People thought that their performance at that year's Peach Festival was the last time they would see the Southern guitar soul burn on stage, but today there are two generations of it. Dickey Betts had a cerebral bleed not long after that. He took a long time to get better, and in the end he stopped performing altogether. But the most important thing was that he never stopped making music. From bar bands to sold-out Fillmore gigs, from center stage with the Allman Brothers to solo trips with Great Southern, Betts showed one thing. There is no need for music to get approval. All it requires is honesty. Dickey Betts lived and performed as if it was the only thing left to believe in. Tragedy and scandals. Some artists go away because they aren't good at what they do. Others, since they don't have the chance. But for Dickey Betts, it was a tragedy that he had too much skill and an ego that no one, not even he himself, could control. By the 1990s, Betts was on a downward spiral, drinking too much and feeling trapped by the legacy he had helped create. He didn't drink to have fun. He drank to calm something inside, a pain that Dwayne Allman's twin guitar used to ease, but once Dwayne died, nothing else could reach it. The band had grown into a huge machine, and Betts, who was a free spirit, felt crushed by schedules, performances, expectations, and the need to live up to a brand that had long boxed him in. He became mad, drank, and occasionally just left without saying anything. He was detained at a strip club in 1996 for not leaving after making a scene. From Fillmore to jail, Dickey Betts back in trouble again was the headline on the front page. Fans started to split. People said he needed help. Some people were quite honest. Betts is ruining the Allman legacy. But nothing could compare to the explosion in 2000. Dickey Betts got the one thing that no musician ever desires after weeks of unexplained absences, backstage tension, and strange behavior during rehearsals. A fax. Oh, that's how the Allman Brothers band let him go. There was no meeting or phone call. Nobody looked him in the eye. He got a letter at home saying that the band will keep going on their summer tour without him. The man who penned Ramblin Man, the band's biggest success, and who kept the Allman Brothers going when Dwayne died. He once called Greg Allman my brother on stage, but today he is no longer with the band he helped start. He didn't keep quiet. Betts took legal action. The press came in droves. Fans made lines. Some people agreed with Greg, while others agreed with Dickey. A lot of people said it was one of the biggest betrayals in American music. Some people said it was a good conclusion for a man who couldn't control himself. Betts just claimed, "I wasn't the problem. I was the reason they were still around." The Allman Brothers went on tour again not long after, but this time without Jessica, Blue Sky, or that wild, unpredictable edge. They were tighter and more polished, but they were missing something that only Betts could bring, the feeling that someone who had lived through it was playing the song. Betts went on tour with his own band in the years that followed. But the old spark never really came back. The press stopped writing about him, and his audiences got smaller. People who used to stand next to him were now on the other side of quiet. He still played Jessica, the instrumental that won a Grammy. But now it wasn't a happy song anymore. It was a voice from the past, a monologue from someone the world had forgotten. Betts did not die from taking too many drugs. He didn't go crazy. He didn't kill himself. But in an industry where musicians are admired for being timely and thrown away for the same reason, he became a shadow of himself, even though he was still alive, still playing, and still singing. Dickey Betts' death wasn't just one accident, like a gunshot or a tumble. His tragedy was slow, unending, and very painful. He realized that the world he helped build had moved on and left no room for him. He lived with it, silently and bitterly, carrying his instrument on. No apologies, no begging, and no looking back. Life at home. But as time went on and Betts drank and used drugs more and more, their existence together became increasingly like a war zone. The most shocking thing happened in 1996 when Donna called the police to their house. She said in the report that Betts had put a gun at her head in a fit of rage after taking heroin and cocaine. The matter was never brought to court since Donna wouldn't testify, but the tragedy left a permanent mark on his personal life. In 2017, Donna was arrested for pointing a gun at a group of school kids playing sports near their house. This brought up the family's history of violence again. Betts never left her, though. They stayed together till the end, like two people who had survived the same battle, even though there were no more battles to win. Betts went through a lot of bad marriages and constant trouble, but one thing he never changed was his love for his kids, especially his son Dwayne Betts, who was named after Dwayne Allman, the musical sibling Betts once considered a soulmate. Dickey Betts was an artist in music that no one could control. When in love, he was the kind of man who was hard to keep. Betts was married 5 times. Every woman who came into his life seemed to go through the same cycle. They were drawn in by his passion and talent, mesmerized by the tender spontaneity that came out when he played guitar, and finally worn down by his impulsiveness, sudden anger, and the long, cold silences that followed his drinking binges. The first spouses weren't very well known, but people who lived near him said that when Betts loved, he loved with brutal honesty, giving the other person not only his heart but also his recklessness, holding nothing back. And maybe that's why all of his early marriages ended in divorce, tears, and courtrooms full of angry words. His 4th marriage was a turning moment. He wed Donna Betts, a woman with a lot of willpower who wasn't easily scared. Donna wasn't simply his wife, she was also his travel partner in the late 1980s and early 1990s. She used to be his tour manager and even argued with him on stage, telling him to put down the bottle before a show. In the beginning, they were like two warriors, one was a passionate artist and the other was a strong lady. Dwayne Betts was more than just a son, he was a successor. Dwayne played, wrote, and acted on stage like the young Dickey, the one who still had aspirations and wasn't yet shattered by reality. Betts was never a kind, warm parent on the outside. He didn't tell anyone he loved them. But when they both played Blue Sky and Ramblin Man on stage in 2018, the way Betts looked at Dwayne, with pride and quiet emotion, stated all that needed to be said. Betts almost completely disappeared from the public eye after having a stroke in 2022. Dwayne carried on the family's musical legacy, and Donna cared for him. Betts stopped performing, fighting, and being famous in his last months. He lived a calm life with his modest family, watching his son finish the trip he had started. Dickey Betts wasn't a flawless man. He couldn't get along with ladies. He hurt the people he cared about. He ruined partnerships that seemed like they would last forever. But he never tried to hide from any of it. He was always honest with her, just like he was with music. And that brutal, honest honesty, even if it didn't make him happy for long, made him a real, unforgettable person, not only to fans, but to those who loved him, left him, and finally stayed. Legacy and influence. Dickey Betts didn't need a formal tribute event or repeated Billboard rankings to illustrate how good he was. He left behind an important part of American music history, especially Southern rock. He didn't just write a hit song for Ramblin Man, he was the main songwriter. He wrote a song for the Free South. A song that every American with rural background could relate to. When Jessica performs the Grammy-winning instrumental, you don't just hear a guitar. You see an open sky, an unending voyage, and the soul of a wanderer who doesn't belong anywhere but in the song. Betts was the first to mix a Gibson Les Paul guitar with 5-string banjo phrasing and classic blues patterns, creating a unique type of southern rock that was influenced by jazz and country. When he and Allman played guitar together, it wasn't a fight. Two souls were moving together. Betts has been called an example of American guitar playing that is both tough and graceful by later musicians like Warren Haynes, Derek Trucks, Charlie Starr of Blackberry Smoke, and even John Mayer. He was also one of the few performers who made it through all of the Allman Brothers band's problems. From untimely deaths to legal battles, all while keeping the southern flavor in every song. His songs didn't use stage effects, electronic trickery, or production techniques. Betts recounted stories with his guitar, and everyone in the audience understood what he was saying. He didn't simply teach them how to play, he taught them how to live, how to play from the heart, and how to never give in to what others wanted. In a time when the market controls everything, Dickey Betts was brave enough to go against the grain, be true to himself, and accept defects as long as they were real. His honesty made him a role model for musicians who want to be free. The most important thing Betts left behind may not be on vinyl, but in the lives of the people who come after him. Dwayne Betts, his son, doesn't simply have the name of a legend. He plays music like his father did, with passion, southern pride, and no hint of being fake. Dwayne and the Allman Betts Band are now the best representatives of southern rock. They keep Dickey Betts' legacy alive in the 21st century without changing what it is. No big speeches, no life story. Dickey Betts left behind a musical legacy that says it all. It's complicated but free, fierce but emotional, and very personal but able to reach millions. That legacy lives on, breathes, and grows without his being there, with every note of blue sky that still rings out. Last year's. Dickey Betts had a stroke in 2018 that needed emergency brain surgery. He never went back to the stage after that. He led a peaceful life in his bayfront home in Osprey, Florida. The sound of waves replaced applause, and the guitar by his bedside became his last friend. He didn't go on tour anymore or stand under stage lights, but he still liked to sit quietly on the porch for hours, looking out over the water where he used to fish when he was younger. Neighbors remembered him humming old songs, murmuring melodies that were never released, and sometimes sitting for hours without saying a word, as if he were talking to someone who had died. Dickey Betts died on April 18 after a protracted fight with chronic obstructive lung disease and cognitive deterioration. He died exactly where he wanted to spend the remainder of his life, with his wife, children, grandchildren, and the music that never stops playing. He was 80 years old. There wasn't a big tribute or a lot of tweets from famous people. But for others who really loved music, it was the day America lost the last honest voice of the Southern guitar. He didn't leave behind fame. It was musical honesty, which not every musician has the guts to keep. He never gave in, never followed trends, never modified his style to fit in, and he never came back to say sorry for what he did wrong. He lived, made things, loved, fought against things, and mourned on his own terms. Then he pulled back like a tired traveler. Without a lot of fuss or asking for thanks. It was never simple to love Dickey Betts. He was complicated, impetuous, and hard to understand in music and in life. But if you were patient enough to really listen, you could hear the honesty in every note he played and every choice he made, even when they were wrong. He didn't create an empire. He didn't make a name for himself. He didn't leave behind a big plan. But he left behind the sound of the Southern guitar. It wasn't loud or polished, but it was so full of feeling that it made you halt in your tracks. Betts opted to live as a man out of time in a world where everything had to be flawless, staged, and go viral to be real. He preserved the imperfections, the tangles, and the wounds in his music because he thought that was the only way it could be authentic. And if you listen to Ramblin Man or Blue Sky today, pay a little closer attention. You will feel the presence of a man who wasn't trying to live forever at some point in the solo. He was just following the call of freedom. Have you ever played Dickey Betts music during a special time in your life? Leave a comment and tell us what you think. Music is more than just sound, it's memory and feeling. It's the last thing that people who have died leave behind. In the next narrative, you'll see that every artist has their own style of surviving and never being forgotten.